The Acute Ailment Power beads are your keys to pushing the amount of damage you can get out of weapons, spells, and arcanas. Woo! 7,220. We catch that? But who has the time to test the base damage of weapons, the damage given by each bead separately, and the damage of both beads combined to find the difference? Well, apparently I do, because I just spent the last 2 days in the shooting range testing the ailment beads so you don't have to too. Which is probably something you will not want to do. But what you will want to do is use these beads together as much as possible if you're coming anywhere close to fire, air, or earth damage. Make of that what you will. This turned out to be on the longer side because I tested the base damage, non-critical, and critical damage of the Hailstorm and Echo without using any beads at first, then with the beads separately, then with both beads together. And there's a test for decay damage at the end, just to be thorough. Use the base damage numbers at the beginning as a guide if you want to see just how much the damage ramps up. Skip ahead if you just want to see the big numbers. Timestamps will be in the comments. I definitely recommend checking out the segments that have the Acute Ailment and Ailment Power beads combined and peep that massive damage, especially the lightning bolt ricochets. Also, keep in mind that the range makes the Echo a bit inconsistent sometimes. It doesn't happen often though. I did my best. But anyway, let's get into it. Alright, so starting off, we're just going to be testing the base damage of our weapons. And we're going to be using the Hailstorm and the Echo for this test. These are the only two weapons we're going to be using, but it should give a good baseline for damage for other weapons. So let's just test this base damage. 128, 179, 136, 190, 104, 145. All right, now let's see our damage on burning enemies. 176, 246, 187, 261, 143, 200. Now let's try burning with stunned. 352, 492, 375, 532. All right, now it's time for the big guy. He won't be stunned to the shockwave, so I've got to use the whisper. 286. And 400. Now here's the base damage for the Echo. 134. 184. 178. 157 somehow. 109. Now with already burning enemies. 184, 203, 196, now for the crit, 143, 150, 165, now burning and stunned, 369, baby, 69, 406, 392, no crit, 431 with crit, 300, 330. That might have been a little off because of the range. All right, so that's base damage on burning enemies, and base damage on burning and stunned enemies. Now let's start adding in some beads and see what the rosaries can do to increase our damage. All right, starting off with the Acute Ailment bead. Now, I found you actually get more damage out of the Acute Ailment bead than you do out of the Ailment Power bead. So let's check the numbers. 224, 313, 238, 333, 182, 254. All right, now I'm going to hit them while burning and stunned. Now, Acute Ailment won't do anything to increase stun damage, but what it does do is it increases the damage dealt to enemies that are burning and stunned at the same time, for huge numbers. 476. Got the 666. 364. 509. And so you can see we get a massive increase out of stunned enemies and burning enemies using the Acute Ailment bead. Now here's the Echo with the Acute Ailment, starting with the Bladesman. 235, 258, 249, 274, 191, and 210. Now for the Acute Ailment bead on burning and stunned enemies. 470, 517, 499, 549, Whisper, 382, 420. Nice. All right, now let's test just the Ailment Power bead. First for the Hailstorm, 188 there. You can already see the damage is a lot less than the Acute Ailment bead. 199, 279, 152, 213. Now burning and stunned with just Ailment Power. 376 on a non-crit, 526 on a crit. So you can see the damage is still pretty impressive, but it is lower than the Acute Ailment bead. 399, 559, 305, 427. And now for the Echo. Get him burning and 197, no crit. 217 with crit. 160 on the big guy, and only 176 on the crit. Only 209, just 230 there. Now burning and stunned. See, we're getting only 329 now, where we were getting 470 before. 434, no 517. 419, 230. Okay, whatever. 320, and 352, no 420 anymore. Aw. But still pretty sufficient overall. And when you put the two together, you can get some massive damage numbers. Now hit them while stunned and burning with Acute Ailment and Ailment Power. The damage is quite impressive. I'd say it's even amazing. All right, this is great because now we can see just how much more damage we're going to get by using both of these beads combined. Let's go with the Hailstorm on a burning enemy. 236 on a base hit. 330 on a crit. Whereas before, with Ailment Power only, we were getting 188 on a base hit and 263 on a critical hit on the Bladesman. That's an increase of 50 points on the base hit and about 70 on the crit. But that's just in the Bladesman, so let's test the rest. 250. 351 on crit. It's about a 50-point increase and about a 70-point increase. Grenadier now. 191 base. 268 crit. So about a 40 and a 50-point increase than just using Ailment Power alone. Now let's go for some big damage with burning and stuns using both of our beads. And we're going to see just how powerful this can get. I mean, look at that. What was that, 472 on a base? 660 on a crit. That was just 660. The damage is outrageous. When you start combining all the ways you can boost your damage. All right. Done divine hit. All right. 536 on a crit. It's just amazing. You really want to use these two beads together. It doesn't even really matter that you're shortening the duration of burn because you're applying it so often anyway. Especially if you have something like the burning stake, which is a constant thing. Now let's go for the Echo. That was 247 and on a crit. 263. 289. All right, that's 201 on a base hit. Still burning. All right, headshot. 221. Let's try burning and stunned. $495. 545. Swordsman now. Ooh, that's a lot of damage. Headshot. 579. Your turn, big fella. $402. 442. That guy's got a lot of armor. The increases are not as pronounced, but they'll still help out for big guys like this. And that will go to show just how much damage you can get out of using the Acute Ailment bead and the Ailment Power bead together. If I had to pick one, I'd probably go with the Acute Ailment. You should see what it can do for Decay Damage, and we'll get to that later. But for now, we've already seen what it can do for burn. Let's see what it can do for increasing the damage from electric ricochets from lightning damage. So you can get massive damage out of the lightning ricochets using both the Acute Ailment bead and the Ailment Power bead combined. But first, we've got to build up to that. Let's take a look at the base damage before we do anything else. Okay, 153 for the major bounce. That wasn't a crit. Let's go for a crit, Bladesman. 215, 107. And if you're not hitting stunned enemies, but you're still getting the lightning bounce, it's not going to deal nearly as much damage. So you want to aim for those stunned enemies. Go for the crit. 228 in the major bounce. Stun the big fella. 262. Was that 124? Try out the echo for good measure. 161 for the crit. 177. We'll skip the swordsman. Let's go for the big fella. Okay, that was 144 and a crit. 131 for the big bounce on a regular hit. But that's just the base damage. Let's start adding some beads and see just how powerful these lightning ricochets can be. Now, this showcase is supposed to be for the Acute Ailment bead. So we're just going to start off showing the damage for that. 307 on the big bounce. Now let's go for a crit. 430 and 215. Swordsman, crit. As for the Grenadier, not going to get those same numbers unless he's stunned. Let's go for a crit. 349 on the big bounce. So I don't know. I wasn't keeping track of the numbers from before, but I can definitely tell that they are a lot higher. Let's check it with the echo. $295 on the big bounce. For the crit, 354. $376. I saw that. 262 and 131. 288, 144. Okay, now time to see how much damage the lightning ricochets can do on burning enemies. If they don't just die right away. Let's try this again. This combination's so powerful, it's just killing them instantly. Let's try it on the Grenadier. There we go. He can actually stand up to some damage. He just died that time, though. Okay, maybe not. I think this combination's too strong. Okay, so I'll try it with just Ailment Power now, since this one's weaker than Acute Ailment. See if they can stand up to this. Nope. Yeah, they're still dying. This ain't gonna work. You know what? I'm just gonna go equip both beads. Since these enemies can't stand up to either one bead on its own anyway, I'm just going to put both on and spawn in some tougher enemies. See if they can actually stand up to the damage. Be right back. So I had to change up the enemies because the smaller guys kept dying too easily to this overpowered combination. The numbers will be a little bit different, but we can still see just how powerful this is going to be. Gonna have to try a bit harder to stun them now. Woo! 7,220. We catch that? Some real damage. That's just amazing. All right, one more. Can't stun this fool, huh? There we go. It's too strong. We're just killing everything. All right, let's try it out with the Echo. This might be kind of difficult. There's a lot I have to keep track of. Let's stun. Shock. Slide. Headshot. Was that 5,957? Pretty nuts. Again. Takes a lot to stun that dude. $5,415 or something? I mean, guys, I don't know what to tell you. The damage is just amazing. It's so powerful, I had to switch to a bunch of mini bosses. Otherwise, those smaller enemies were just dying outright. But that just goes to show the power that this thing can do. I mean, where else are you going to get damage numbers like that? We were hitting in what? Like the 5,000s and stuff? Pretty crazy, pretty crazy. Pretty crazy. And even without the whole setup, the lightning damage itself can still deal some pretty consistent and powerful damage on its own. So that's why you guys really want to use this combination together. I'm not just talking the beads here. I'm talking the whole setup. Using high damage weapons, aiming for critical hits, and combining as many elements as possible for maximum damage. So testing out on these mini bosses is actually the best testing that I can do. But if it can deal this amount of damage to these guys, imagine what it will do to smaller enemies. But we're not done yet. There's still one more element we have to check out, and that is Decay. All right, so now we want to get onto Decay testing. And this should be pretty easy because there's no weapon testing that we need to do. Air and fire have a way to increase weapon damage, but Decay only increases itself. Let's get testing on these enemies. This is just the base damage, and it's pretty even across the board with the Stigma Diabolicum. Let's look at it from the Rotweaver's perspective. Going up to 6 there. All right, looks like tops out at 6 here. All right, so let's try this now on burning enemies. And of course, the damage is the same no matter the enemy type, but it's a lot higher now. Or at least a little higher. I won't say it's too much, but it's a couple points more, and it does matter. All right, Rotweaver time. Topping out at 12. And I think we can say that's certainly a lot higher than what we were getting before. Now, I did try this with the Blight Cyst, but the damage never really seems to scale as high as it does with the Rotweaver or the Stigma Diabolicum or the Miasma. So we're just going to stick with the Rotweaver, the Miasma, and the Stigma Diabolicum for this testing. And that should be a good base point. Take a look at the base numbers for the Miasma. 4s, 5s, scaling up to 6s. I think it tops out at 10. No, 11. Okay. Now miasma on burning enemies. It's going to be a bit tricky. I just want to set them on fire. I don't want them to die. 10s, 12s. Looks like 12s, 14s. Looks like it's topping out at 14 on burning enemies. All right now, but that was just base damage. So let's check it out with the Acute Ailment bead. Up to 9s. That's about how much damage it was doing on burning enemies without the Acute Ailment bead. Let's try the Rotweaver. Looks like 10s, 12s. Topping out at 12 with Acute Ailment. Let's hit them with fire and rot at the same time. 23s. I mean, that's a lot. That is a lot. Try the Rotweaver. I think I saw a 26 in there, did I? 32 for the Rotweaver Decay. So yeah, it makes a whole hell of a lot of a difference. Now, here's the miasma with Acute Ailment. Starting off at 9, starting off strong already. And we're already all the way up to 21s and 30s. That is crazy powerful. That's just crazy powerful. And we haven't even added in the burns yet. Starts off doing 20. Up to 48, I'm seeing. I think I might just top out at that. But I mean, 50 points of damage almost. From Decay Techs on burning enemies. 67 there. I think that's pretty good. I think that's good. Now, we will try it with just Ailment Power, and you'll see the decrease. And for the miasma, 5, 5, 5, 8, going up to 8s. What else we got? 12s. We're going to cap out at 18. So not as strong with Ailment Power as with Acute Ailment. But I told you that already. Hit them with the burn. 24, 24, 24. 36. Try out the Rotweaver. Nine looks like on the big guy. Looks like 9's where it wants to be for the top. While burning, they don't just outright die. 15 for the top. The Stigma Diabolicum. 5s across the board. Try it on burning enemies. Starts off at 12 damage ticks. But now we want Acute Ailment and Ailment Power together. And now we're going to see what we can do with both combined. So there's that. Let's try this on burning enemies now. 28 for every damage tick, which is rather impressive, I would say. Test the Rotweaver. We got 38. I think 38. I saw 31 on the wind up, and topping out at 38 for the Rotweaver, and that is not bad. Now keep in mind, these are numbers we can only hit using these two beads together. That's why I showed you guys the buildup to see just how much damage we're increasing with every bead we add. And of course, we have the miasma. Let's see what it can do. Starting off at 10, ramping up to 27. Killing enemies so fast, I don't think it's going to top out. 33 was the highest hit we had on the Grenadier. I think 33 might be the highest, actually. Don't think it's going to go any higher than that. No, it will not. Unless it crits, of course. But, I mean, does it really have to? If I can just drop one of these things and let it clear an entire enemy spawn for me? I mean, I could walk away, go grab a sandwich, come back, and everything's dead. So let's try this now on burning enemies. Gotta make them not die somehow. 64. I saw that in there. I think 64 is going to be the highest. This is the true definition of set it and forget it. You set it, and you just forget it. Just let the miasma do our dirty work for us. Catch you guys later. The damage is impressive. 64, 64, 64. And that's if enemies don't just die before it even reaches that high. And as for the Rotweaver, 32 there, I think I saw. 32. I think our damage ticks are going to top off at 32. Oh, 39. I saw that. See if I can get that again. Well, I don't think I can get that 39 again, which just goes to show it's probably kind of inconsistent. I don't know how that happened. But 32 is the top. All right. And I think that will conclude our testing for this one. Now, what did we learn today? Hopefully a lot. And hopefully you learned a lot about not only the elemental combinations and the type of damage you can get out of them, but the value and the power of using the Acute Ailment bead. Use it separately if you want for its massive damage boost, or combine it with the Ailment Power bead for even more damage. This is going to be your best way for scaling damage and taking care of some of the harder enemies and some of the toughest content in the game. It's not only a smart combination of elements and using your skills, but also the right combination of rosaries. All right, that will about wrap it up. Go play some Witchfire and have some fun.